Welcome to the hook and lift map of John Summit's La Danza. It was recently released. Today is the 19th, a couple weeks ago. And so we're going to do a hook and lift map, and that's where we're going to map out the hooks and lifts of the track. The hooks are obviously like the vocals, the sound design kind of things, the things that capture people's attention. And then you have the lifts. The lifts are how the track lifts in energy or falls in energy over time, just how it comes up and down. And so there are certain elements that producers use to raise the energy, and then they take them away to have the energy fall down. And we want to keep track of that development, because ultimately hook and lift maps are all about understanding how an arrangement develops over time, and that the major components of that development are the hooks, how those hooks develop, and the lifts, how the lifts help bring the energy levels up and down over time. That's what it's all about. I think that arrangement is the most important part of production for my system, the C4 system. You've got the groove, you've got the hooks, you've got the arrangement, and then you have mixing and mastering, which is like kind of the presentation of the track. Obviously, the groove is really important. The hooks are really important, but both of those come together ultimately to serve the arrangement, because it's all about how those develop over time, right? Like producers they get into a loop, which means they have usually hooks over a groove, and then the question is, well, then how do you go outward? And that's what the arrangement is, and that's what the listener ultimately cares about. They care about that experience over time. And so it's all about how the groove develops over time. It's all about how the hooks develop over time. That's the experience ultimately that you're creating. And that's ultimately what the hook and lift maps help you learn, is how to develop a track, the hooks, the groove in a compelling way over time. And then of course, mixing and mastering is just, the sonic presentation of all that good stuff. And so that was kind of a really big zoomed out overview of hook and lift maps. But let's get back to John Summit's track here. And so we'll go ahead and map out the hooks and the lifts. I'm just going to go ahead and right away create a beat little track here, because I'm not interested in breaking down the beats. I'm going to take the beat for granted, but if a lift comes in like a ride, I'm going to map that, because that's an element that lifts the energy. But we're not going to break down the lift. So let's just get started. Here we go. So right away, we've got some cool things. This is just a simple beat, okay? We've got a full kick here, so maybe I'll touch on that in a second. But yep, pretty simple. And another thing we have is a motif. I'm just gonna label that here. And in the intro, like typically what you do is in the intro, you're just gonna have the beats or the high pass beats. That's what the intro is. It's just a DJ lead in, right? But one thing you can do and think about is this is where you introduce the motif of your track, the percussion motif of your track. And that's what's going on here. He's created a motif. Not all tracks have motifs, but motifs are cool because they add a little bit of a catchy element to the groove. Like it's just a little hummable drum melody, you can think of it as. And that's one thing you could throw right into the intro. It's just, anyway, I'm just going to write motif here once, but this is just the intro, so let's keep on moving quickly. Here we go. All right, so this is a little bit of a P8 or a Punk 8. We'll get into punks maybe in a little bit. I've listened to this track a number of times. There's not too many punks, but there are these Punk 16s, and they're really exciting. They're really cool, so we'll talk about punks when we get there. But for now, just think of punks as like little things that happen at the structural moments of the track, like the 4-bar mark, the 8-bar mark, the 16-bar mark. You can see this one's a little bit more dramatic at the end of 16 rather than the 8, but let's just keep going. And I'm just going to create a punk/edit map here so we can kind of just loosely keep track of these things. So you can see we have a little bit of what I call a P8, and then we have a pretty dramatic kind of edit punk over here. And edit is, you can see how this is more dramatic than this, and edit is really just a dramatic punk, but we'll get to that again in a little bit. right, so right away we have this intro vox tease right here. And so this is very typical, where we just have the intro and then we tease the vocal just right before what I call the bass drop, okay? So we'll start labeling these sections here. This is just the intro, and then we will get into the bass drop right here, the next 16 bars. And I might as well say it now. This is what a perfect example of what I call the HD2 formula. And we'll go over that as we go here. But the HD2 formula starts, obviously, just like every song, with an intro. If we're going to be really precise about it, the intro is 16 bars. And that's exactly what we have here. After the intro in the HD2 formula, we get into the bass drop. That usually goes for 16 bars. That's exactly what we have here. So I'm going to move the beats over. We also have a bass. And also one of the things that often happens in the HD2 formula, when properly executed, is a hook tease right there before the bass drop. Okay, just introducing the bass drop. Okay, I'm sorry, introducing the hook right there, and then boom, you go into the bass drop. So let's listen to that. And so obviously here we have the bass. We have, let's listen to see if there's any lifts in the drums. Not really. We do have what I call an entry. So this is going to be a bass drop entry. Listen right here. We're going to get this little sound that has a little bit of a delay on it. A little bit of a resonating, little res saw wave type of thing. So I'll do like res saw with delay. There you go. Okay. So the bass drop, what is the bass drop? The bass drop is where we simply introduce the bass line. That's it. Okay, so here you'll see that we're not going to have much going over the top of this first 8 bars here. Okay, the A section of the bass drop. So we have A and then we have B. So in the A section of the bass drop, it's just going to be the bass because we're teaching people the bass line before we start throwing a bunch of hooks on top of it. They need to understand how to dance and move and groove to the track, to the low end, to the groove, before we can start throwing things on top. Once this is ingrained in their brain, then we can start putting things on top. But for now, we just want to present the bass line. It also makes it really easy for DJs to mix in or mix out when you have it, keep it simple like this. But anyway, here we go. Okay, so right here, this is the 8-bar mark. This is a P8, Punk 8. Again, we'll get into that in just a little bit, probably in this drop over here. But well, you can see it's the exact same thing. So he's recycling punks. Okay, when I'm just going to throw this out there. When you have recycled punks, when you have the same things every time, I call them signposts because it lets people know basically where they are structurally in the song. One of the things that top producers do very, very well, and I think consciously so, is they're very structural in their production. So listen to this right here. Okay, right here. Same thing, and that's a very, very good thing because you're teaching people where they are in the track and ultimately then what to come to kind of expect to happen. So let's listen over here. Okay, so we have taught people the groove. Now it's time to start throwing things on top. And what we have here is a transition sound, but it's in the vocals. So we're going to do a BD trans for transition. And it's going to be a Vox rep, which is a vocal repetition low pass up. Okay, that is the absolutely classic thing to do, is to kind of introduce a vocal through the bass drop, the B section of the bass drop, and have it low pass up. Okay, a repetition, a vocal repetition, it just low passes up, and that's exactly what we have here. Okay, so really quick, the bass drop is divided into an A and a B. In the A section here is just groove. That's it, nothing else. And then in the B section here, we can start to introduce something else. And typically, what you want to do in the B section of the bass drop is you want to have a sound kind of transition us into the next section, which is going to be the break. Okay, and so that's what John's doing here. He's using the vocal to low pass up. He's low passing the vocal up and using that vocal repetition as a transition element into the next section of the track. That's perfect. All right, cool. So this is a low pass up. So one of the things I'm going to do here is any time that we get into a new section or something else is going on with the vocal, like obviously John just has this vocal and he's low passing it up and he's moving it across the track, and it's probably all on one track in his Ableton session, but I'm going to make different sections. I'm going to create different tracks for different sections of the track for the vocal. Okay, so let's see. So this is going to be the break 1 Vox, okay? And it's just going to be pretty much a Vox rep. He's just repeating this phrase over and over throughout the track. Okay, and it starts out with a low pass up here, okay? All right, now this is a high pass. This is a high pass on the drums and the bass. This is going to be break 1, okay? Now, so zooming out, you can see here we have 16 bars intro, 16 bars bass drop divided into an A and B section. And then here we're going to have the break 1. This is absolutely like textbook HD2 formula. And then here we have the break. Again, this is going to be divided into an A and B. The A is going to be like the proper break, and the B section is going to be a build section. But it's going to be a very clean A-B structure. So I'm just going to move these guys over here. Let's listen to what else is going on over here, though. There could be some atmospheric things. Which brings us to, if we are going to do a break, what do we need? Typically, if you're going to give a break, you're giving people a break from the low end. So high pass is number 1. 2 is you want to introduce typically something new. John kind of teased the hook here, and so it's fine that it comes in to the break, and that's cool. Another thing, if you're working on a track and you don't want to tease the hook through the bass drop, a really nice thing you could do here is just have the hook come in during the break. But the important things I'm saying with the break is number 1, high pass. Number 2, new with capital N, capital E, capital W, something new. And then number 3 is kind of a booster for a break, which is for a break section, which is to add some kind of new space or atmos, okay? So he's going to do that here in the build section. And right here, we're just pretty much just getting a high pass groove and the low pass vocal up, but you'll hear a couple new elements come in the B section of the break, where it's kind of more atmospheric. And we'll get to that in a second. Here we go. So again, I'm going to point it out. Okay, we're getting that reverse crash type of thing. So again, these are just all signposts letting people know we are now changing into a new section here. Something's going to happen. And what happens here is that we are going to start building, which again tells the listener something's going to happen next. And so you can see the forward momentum that is constantly created by even just having these signposts, because these signposts tell listeners in the same way that build elements tell listeners that we're going into a new section. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so you can hear the string. So that is kind of an Atmos thing. And then we also have this kind of jangle effects. It's kind of like a higher ARP. Let me just get these MIDI clips in here and you'll be able to hear that. Okay, so let's back up. What do we have here? So in the B section of the break one, B1, we have the build, okay? And so there are 5 build elements. They are rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. Okay, we'll get to pipo in a sec, but rep is a hook repetition. So what hook is repeating? Well, the hook has been repeating for the last like 30 seconds or so. So it's going to continue to repeat. And then here at the 4-bar mark, the hook is going to repeat at a faster rate. So it's an acceleration rep. That's a typical thing to do as well. And so let's listen to that. Listen to the vocal. It's obviously just repeating. But then once it gets here to that 4-bar mark, then it's going to repeat faster. So listen to that. Cool. And so you can hear that repeat. And I like that he doesn't do like a clean repetition. It kind of almost sounds awkward. Like da 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 da. Da 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 da. See, like right here, it's not clean, right? Like 2 words, just like he took the audio clip and just obviously duplicated it, but 2 words just kind of sounds jagged. And that was intentional. I'm not being critical here. I'm saying that was intentional. And the reason why he's being intentional like that is because it creates an instability. Obviously, that's jarring, right? And so that creates tension in the listener with this kind of awkward repetition. And then boom, we're going to get back into the full hook here. And so this was very intentionally done to have this kind of awkward, jagged kind of hook rep right there. But what we're doing here is walking through the build elements. And so that's number 1 is some kind of hook rep. Number 2 is hook rep roll. So roll is just going to be a simple snare roll. You can hear that. Okay, right down the middle. Rep, roll, rise. You could definitely hear some risers in there, just usually white noise or some kind of cool LFO thing. But this, I think, is just pretty much white noise. You can hear it really resonating up there high. Okay, and then you have, so rep, roll, rise, grow. Grow is where you grow the space, and you could do that a couple ways. Number 1 is through like a reverb, putting things into a reverb. That's definitely going on here. Another way is to open up the filter on a synth that's playing through here. And so he doesn't really have anything like that, but what he is doing is growing the space through reverb. And he's probably using something like Endless Smile, I suspect, and that's what's giving everything this kind of washout vibe. So that's grow. Okay, so rep, roll, rise, grow. Let's listen to grow. Here we go. All right, so that is those big 4 elements, the rep, roll, rise, grow, all there, checked all the boxes. And then the last box is pipo, P-I-P-O, and that stands for pattern interrupt, P-I, pay off, P-O, P-I-P-O, pattern interrupt, pay off. So all of this is a pattern that is being established. It's a build pattern. It's building and building and building. That snare roll, the growing, the risers, all of that is a pattern that is just like, it's just building and building and building and tension, and then boom, it stops. Okay, so that is your pattern interrupt. It gets cut. Okay, so there's your interrupt. And then after the pattern interrupt, you're going to have that payoff moment. So pattern interrupt right there, and then payoff. And that's where you get pipo. So John has, and so let's listen to that. Okay, so here let's listen to the pattern, through here. It stops, it gets interrupted. We have the payoff, and then boom, we go into the drop. So listen to that. Here we go. All right, cool. And I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this little kick fill right here is obviously really cool. You don't have to have a fill, but what this is I call this a pipo pulse, because having those kicks right there kind of reintroduces the pulse of the track right before the moment, okay? But anyway, so those are the 5 build elements: rep, roll, rise, grow, pipo. John's got all of them flawlessly here. And then let's go ahead and mark some of this up. So I'm going to do Vox rep in B1. Okay, so like I said, I'm just going to make note of when like different vocal techniques kind of pop up, or when they happen in different sections. Okay, so this is a rep. I just want to put that on a different track, because then at the end I can kind of see how many sections of vocals there are and how many different techniques are used. And that could be a really useful thing in understanding of how am I going to have these hooks develop. How many different ways am I going to present these hooks, and how many different places. So let's now also create another one, right, for the Vox Pipo. Okay. So these are all slightly different techniques. This is obviously just a hook repetition of that main phrase. Then we have a faster repetition, an accelerated repetition, and then we have the pipo, which is also serves as a pickup melody into the build. I'm sorry, into the drop here. Okay, so pipo in B1. Okay, there we go. And so we have the snare roll, and let's go ahead and just put effects up, because he definitely has some up effects going through here. So let's just go like this, and probably just right through there. So let's take a step back again and look at kind of the bigger picture. So far, we have intro, 16 bars, bass drop, 16 bars, break 1, 16 bars. The bass drop and the break 1 in particular are divided into clean A-B sections. Bass drop, we just have the groove. In the A section, in the B section, we get that Vox rep LP up as the trans element. And then in break 1, B1, we have a clean A-B as well. We have the break, which is like a proper break, which is just chilling, right? We have a high pass on the drums, and we have that vocal kind of coming up again, and then we get into the B section of break 1, which is the build, and we get those 5 clean, clear build elements: the rep, the roll, the rise, the pipo, and the rep, the roll, the rise, the grow, and the pipo. So every single box of HD2 is being the HD2 formula is being checked perfectly in this track. Which I always get excited about, and it's also number 1, and went right to number 1, I think, when it came out, pretty much. So next what we're doing is we're now going into break 1. We're going into hook drop 1. And it's called hook drop because that's when we start putting hooks over the top of the drop. Okay, full presentation hooks. Here in the bass drop, we're just introducing the bass line. We're just getting people dancing. We're just getting them used to the groove of the track. Okay, we're not overwhelming them. If we dropped hooks on top of the bass drop, we would overwhelm them. Here in the hook drop, we have now had the groove pretty much for a minute. Okay, 30 seconds in the bass drop, another 30 seconds high passed in the break, in break 1, and so people get it. They get the rhythm of the dance. They get the groove of the track, and so they know how to move to it. And so here now we can start throwing things on top that make people excited. And so that's what the hook drop is. A proper hook drop is one that has proper hooks on top, full presentation hooks, and that is exactly what we're going to get. And so let's move on into it. Here we go. So again, same thing right here. We get that P8, and then here we're going to get a P16. So let's now talk about punks, okay? Punks are, you could think, it's short for punctuation of a track. It's the grammar of a section of a track, basically. So if you think of an English sentence, you can have like a comma in the middle of that sentence and then a period at the end. The period is a more dramatic punctuation mark. It's a full stop rather than a comma, which is like a kind of temporary pause. And so you can see there's kind of a hierarchy of the punctuation in an English sentence. You have that comma in the middle, not a full stop, and then at the end you have the period, which is more dramatic. So it's higher up, you could say, on the hierarchy of drama for punctuation. And the exact same true, there's a similar grammar for drops and in a dance track. So here at the P8, okay, the Punk 8, 8 refers to where it kind of happens around, which is the 8-bar mark. We're getting what we looked at, okay, that kind of signposting, reverse crash type of thing. Listen. But compared to this guy, okay, this P16, that is minor, okay? And so you can see that this P16 is more dramatic than the P8, okay? And so let's listen now to the P16 right here. And so this is kind of a callback to the build elements. We can actually kind of count off what's going on in this dramatic edit. Okay, an edit for me is just a dramatic punk. Typically going to end an edit you'll find at the end of 16 bars or at the end of 32 bars. But it's just a very dramatic punk. And so here, let's figure out what we got. You hear the snare roll. And you can hear, we get a pipo, right? Pattern interrupt, payoff. What else do we have? We have grow. Okay, you can hear that going out into a reverb. Rep, roll, rise. Do we have a riser? I mean, maybe. But you can hear this is just kind of like a mini build. It's just called back to the build elements that we found over here. And that's what's going on for this punk. But that's the end of punks here. It's a really simple idea. Just keep in mind that it's kind of a hierarchy of a drama. So this guy is obviously more dramatic than this one. So this would be like the comma, this is the period, or even you could think of this as an exclamation mark, you know. Another thing is when you have P8, P16, you also have P4s, okay? And so a P4 would be where just something happens at the 4-bar mark. The reason why something doesn't happen in his track, and let me show you. I'm going to play right through here, and you would typically expect something to happen right around where my cursor is. This is the P4, but it doesn't. And the reason why it doesn't is because his percussion is already so kind of busy and energetic, and the vocal is also so energetic that we don't need something here to kind of just excite us. Everything is exciting as we're moving along in this drop. We don't need these bursts of excitement. Okay, so because we're just riding the momentum of that busy kind of 16/5 percussion of the drums, and with the exciting vocal, it's exciting enough that we don't need just these spurts of excitement. So check this out. Let's just play. Okay, and so we do have something little here happening at the P8, but we don't have anything at the P4. But if you listen to other tracks, a lot of times you'll hear things happening at the P4s. So here's a P4, here's a P4, and P4s belong to 8-bar sections. So this isn't like a P12. That sounds awkward. This is a P4 of this 8-bar section. So we can talk of P4s like these, P8s, P16, P32s. Feel like there was something else. Another thing, and you can go even more granular. Okay, so here's P4. Now here's a P2. Here's a P6. Again, anything below like a P8 belongs to 8 bars. So here we'd have another P2. Here we'd have a P4. Here we'd have like a P6. But I would count this as like just a big P8. You see, it's just happening at the end. And so for me, that would be a P8. But that's enough of that. Those are punks. Of course, if you have any questions about those, leave them down below in the video. What I want to point out now is, zooming out again, we're going to get a nice clean A-B section of this drop section. Okay, so we saw a nice clean A-B in the bass drop. We saw a nice clean A-B in break 1. And now we're going to get a nice clean A-B in HD1. Let's just go from here. All right, cool. And you know what? I didn't even recognize that. That's even a bigger callback than I thought to the break, because we're actually getting HD1. Let's do like a trans rep. Okay, right here, we're repeating the vocal just as we did in the break section. Check it out. Okay, there's a rep. Now here's another rep. awesome. Okay, so that's awesome. Yeah, let's keep going. And so now we're going to enter into the B section. And the reason, and that's why we want to have a big kind of almost callback to the build, mini build, big edit, whatever you want to say. We're having this here because it's going to help define these two sections and separate these two sections. So here we have a clean A, here we're going to have a clean B, and they're separated by a very dramatic edit, okay? And so now we can move into the B section. Let's listen. Okay, lots of things going on here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to call these segs, vocal segs for segment, because these are segment chops. It's not the full vocal anymore. It's just little segments of them. So we'll call that Vox segs, and this is going to be HD1 for hook drop 1. You can see why I call it a hook drop. Compared to the bass drop, listen. Nothing but the groove, but now we're getting proper hooks on top, and I'm trying to explain why, which is we need to teach them the groove here, and then we can start throwing things on top here, and that's exactly what's going on. And so now let's go ahead and move into the B section. So we have the segs here. I'm just going to quickly draw out these 8 bars, and that's going to duplicate. We're also going to get some sound design hooks that correspond with the vocals. And so that's going to define then the AB of the HD1 here. And so A is just going to be the Vox line, okay, the long line. You can call it a verse, you can call it like a whatever. I'm going to call it a long, it's a line, like, you know, it's just a lyric. And then here we're going to have the B, which is going to be a Vox segs, call response CR with SD hooks, sound design hooks, okay? So that is what defines these two sections. We have that vocal verse, long line. We have the Vox segments here that correspond with the sound design hooks, and we're going to now map those out here, okay? But very, 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 very clean structural production. So here we have, I'm just going to call it like an ascending melodic bass. Okay, because boom, 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 it just keeps on going up. And so what we could do is, in this section, we can kind of map out what, where these parts are playing, so we can see how they correspond and how they interact with each other. So let's go ahead and map out the vocals here. Sorry, I know that's annoying just to keep stopping it, but okay, so it pretty much just repeats like this. Let's just see if that works. Okay, so that is how that's going. Let's now do this kind of ascending bass line type of thing. Kind of does that, boom, boom, boom. So yeah, it actually does. He does this, boom, boom, boom. I'm not putting in the right notes here, by the way. I'm just kind of approximating. What's important to me is just making sure that the melody's going up. Okay, cool. So right away you could see that we get that nice little bass, that crunchy bass sound, and then we get these little vocal chops, and then we're going to get that movement up in the bass line, and then we hear again that little bass kind of cutting through, and then we have the bass again cutting through right here, and then they kind of play together at the end. And so the bass is really just filling the gaps here. We have other sound design elements that are filling the gaps as well, but I'm just pointing out these two right now. And so what's interesting is on the downbeats, so here, 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 we have that bass coming in. And so it's giving a little bit of a structural accent to the downbeats with that bass. And it's a nice, it's really cool because it's also an ascending melody. And so it creates this really nice rising feeling. It's just really exciting. And then we have the vocal kind of playing the same thing over these 8 bars here. And so we have this kind of nice contrast where the vocal is just kind of repeating itself, but the bass is changing. And so this is staying the same. This is changing insofar as it's going up in the melody. And so it's just a really nice contrast and interplay between these two. Not only are they interplaying or corresponding or interacting, they're also contrasted in a certain way, which is that the vocal is staying the same, it's repeating, but the bass is changing over the course of 4 bars. Okay, so really cool there. Okay, and you can also hear this kind of like, I don't know, I'm just going to call it like a little Jamaican kind of thing. Okay, so, you know, so if I hear this right, this is also a call response with itself. So this is going bump, 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 or whatever. Ba-dum. Boom, boo, doo, 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 something like this, right? So this is going and then this one is responding. Okay, so lots of cool call response things going on within this drop, the B section of the HD1. All right, and of course we're getting that P8 that we keep getting, that signpost, because that's just going to tell us that we're moving now into the next section. Something else is going to happen, probably something that's going to help us transition into the main break and build. But one thing I want to point out here is, look at this guy is also interacting with the vocal. This little melody is playing in the gaps of the vocal, just like that. See, they're playing in the gaps. But it's also playing over this little bass riff or bass kind of sustained pattern that's playing. And the reason why these work together, obviously, is because this is kind of a high pattern, a couple octaves above the bass. The bass is just basically playing sustained notes, and this is playing a melody. And so there's lots of cool contrasts and interactions going on within this drop section. Yeah, this is just going to repeat, so let's just move this over, and let's listen to how it changes, or if we get anything new. Let's check it out. Okay, so we have this little kind of, I don't even know what to call it, jangle entry thing. Okay. And this is now call responding with itself, and it's playing over the top of this guy. So this is cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. So it's going to be like riff A. We'll duplicate this. It's going to be like riff B. Okay, and then we just have the delay. Now he also has this kind of like, ooh, kind of like a tension drone, some kind of reverse reverb effect going on over here. Just kind of like a tonal, maybe that's what I'll call it, tonal riser. All right, cool. And so, I mean, there we go, just breaking that down. But here we could see we have the A section, we have the clean B section, and there's a lot of interesting call response elements going on in the B section. If you're thinking about this is complicated, it's really not. What you would do is you'd probably start with a vocal, okay? You start with a vocal, you come up with a chop, just like this. He likes this chop. And then you pretty much just find sound design elements to fill the gap. And so what John decided to do is his bass in the track is mostly sub. If we go back to the bass drop, you see it's pretty much you can see a harmonic right there, but it's very, very quiet. And so this is mostly just a sub. And so below 100 hertz, around 50 hertz. So that gives you a lot of room to kind of mess around. And so when he's using this bass sound over the drop, okay, you could do that because these are just upper harmonics that you hear cutting through. He's definitely high passed out the low end that would conflict with the sub, and so we're just listening to the upper harmonics. And so that works with the bass just because, you know, he's using a high pass. But it's a cool sound, and so he's just using that to interact with the vocals. So you have the vocal, you get a chop that you like that sounds kind of cool, and then you get your some other kind of sound. In this case, it's going to be kind of a bass with a distorted bass where you take out the lows so they're not conflicting with the sub, but you get that nice growl, and so that's just kind of playing an ascending melody that just kind of plays in the gaps of the vocal. Okay, and then it comes down after 4 bars and it just repeats. And so there you go with that. And then you get another sound up higher, a couple octaves above the bass here, that's also still playing in the vocal gaps. And so it all kind of works together. It all kind of makes sense. If I made it sound complicated as we were going through it, it's really not, because the practical side of this is just come up with that chop and then come up with some other sounds that will fit in the vocal gaps. And the easiest way to do this is to just start, like, pick a synth, whether you have silent or if you have massive or whatever is out there these days, Serum, then just start running through presets. And when you listen to a preset, start playing around and ask yourself what part goes best with this particular sound. Obviously, some sounds are going to go well with like a sustained part, kind of like how this bass is, where you're just kind of holding a note. Other sounds are going to go well with more of a melodic type of shape, like this. And so just start playing with things and just put them into gaps. And that's really it. Okay, fill the gaps. There you go. Not too complicated, but when it all works together, it sounds great, it feels great, and it keeps things moving. So let's keep moving. Okay, so this is going to be the strip melody. So now we're getting into the main break and build, okay? And so this is also going to be divided into a clean A-B. Basically, what we want with MBB, which is the main break and build, is we want a V shape, okay? The V shape is the tension is going down, and then the tension is going up, okay? So we're releasing tension down, the energy is falling, and then rising. So, or more simply, down, then up. Down, then up. That is going to be the clean A-B of the MBB. So we have down, then we have up. That's it. That's about as like higher level as you could possibly get. That's the kind of emotion or story you want to tell across MBB here. And so with down, what's John going to do? Well, he goes into a strip section. Strip section is where you just have the kick and the bass playing, and all the other drums are typically gone away. Sometimes you can still have the clap without the hat, or you can have the hat without the clap. But typically a strip is just going to be focused primarily on the low end groove element, so the kick and the bass, and then you can still have hooks on top. And you can feel that it drops the energy down. It steps the energy level down. Feel it as we're coming out of the drop here, how the energy steps down a level as we go into the strip. Okay, cool. And so this is a good example of introducing something new. You don't always have to introduce something new in the main break and build. Like I was kind of hammering over here with break one, you want to introduce something new or give the full presentation of something you presented over here. In the main break and build, you don't need to introduce something new. John is, and that's cool because it's just giving people ear candy. It's giving them something else to kind of latch onto. And then we're also getting the Vox Rep LP up here. This is a trans. Okay, so a new section, we'll put that in there. And you can just see like how the vocal develops, and we're labeling it here, and you can see that these are all different techniques. Here we have a rep, here we have a pipo, here we're going to get the full presentation of the vocal, and then here we're getting a transition up, it sounds like. Oh, this is the trans rep that we have like we do over here in the build. And then here we have the segments from HD1, the B section. And then here we're going to get the low pass up in the main break and build. And so just having it like this just gives you a really good idea of how this vocal develops over time and how many different ways the vocal was used. And so let's keep going here with the strip. So we're going to create a new track, which is effects down / accent. And so I'm just going to go like this, and you can hear the do 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 do. So that's just an effects down because effects are cool because they explicitly tell you the emotion that's going on right now, or the energy that's going on right now. Here, obviously, we're going to have up effects because we're building tension. Here, we're releasing tension, so we have down effects, effects that move in a downward fashion. And so. All right, and so now we get to the basement of the track. And so you could feel now that we had a step down from the end of HD1 into MBB. Then we're having a step down again from the strip down into the basement of the track, the lowest part, the chillest part of the track, where it's just the absolute bottom of the track, okay? And so let's go ahead and see what's going on in this section. All right, so we have now the full presentation of the vocal through here. We have no bass high pass kick, and what he's done is he's introduced a sub in the low that just kind of sustains and ascends, just like it was kind of doing back over here. So it's kind of a callback to the synth, the ascending melodic bass in HD1. But if we check out the spectrum analyzer, we'll see the sub here. Okay, so I just brought over the little Jamaican perk thing that was playing over here. He just brought that in. Hear it over here. Whatever that is. And yeah, so that's just something you brought back. But this is the basement of the track because you just have a high pass kick. Okay, there's no bass, there's no groove. It's just like floating in the air. Okay, and so then what we're going to do is we're going to start the transition back up. So here we're walking down the mountain. Now we're going to start walking back up the mountain. And the way that the most obvious thing to do is to just bring back the full beat, high pass. So here I wrote high pass beat. So this is that first kind of step back up in energy. Just copying things over. Here we have the sub that's still there. Here we have the vocals. Those are continuing to go. What else is there? Okay, we have those jangle things. Now, if you listen down the center channel, you'll hear an arpeggio come in. Actually, I'm listening back here and I can hear the arp coming in over here. Okay, so there's a lot of little jangly, sprinkly things that are going on. So I just have this general jangle thing. So I'm just going to put that there. Let's listen to see if there's a string. There's some high sustained elements in there, so I'm just going to put those under the string category. But you can hear just there's a lot going on to create this kind of epic vibe, an atmospheric vibe. You've got a lot of the like sustained things. He's had these jangly things with the delays that are really high up there, and just really filling out the frequency spectrum here, actually. Let's see how much sub is in this. So still a good amount. Like you really don't want to actually go over 12 like he's doing. He's not going over 12 is what I'm saying, because you know when the lows come in, you really want those lows to hit hard. And you know, the more lows you take away as you're progressing in the main break and build, the more dramatic and impactful it's going to feel when you get back into the drop. And so just interesting that he does have a lot of kind of low end playing through the main break and build, but I suspect that it's going to go away over here. So let's check this out. So you can hear the snare roll starting to come up over here. Okay, cool. So a little elevation of the MBB over the break one. And so the break one rep here was only 4 bars. But here we're getting it for the full 8 bars here. So a little bit of an elevation there. So let's see. So you can hear the sub go away. Okay, so again, with the build, what are we going to do? We have the rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. So what do we have? Do we have the rep? Yes, we do, with the vocal. Also, we have the, you could say even the ARP is a kind of a repetition. It's also growing, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So we have the rep, we have the roll, which is coming from the snare. We have the rise. We definitely have some risers kind of going on in the background, but a lot of that rising effect is also coming from the grow. The growth we're getting from different sounds. And I think he's using something like Endless Smile because everything is just washing out. And so that's where we're getting the grow. So rep, roll, rise, grow, and then we also have the pipo. And so let's listen to this as we build the build pattern. Then that pattern gets interrupted. So PI, pattern interrupt, and then pipo, which is payoff. And that's going to be the vocal again. We're going to get a little bit of a fill back into the drop. And so let's listen to that. Listen to the pattern, listen to the interruption of the pattern, listen to the payoff, and then we'll get into the drop. All right, so again, checking off all the boxes. Let's zoom out real quick. Again, HT2 formula. We have intro, bass drop, break 1, hook drop 1, main break and build. Now we are getting into HD2, okay, which is going to be a hook drop 2. And just like HD1, it's a hook drop because it has proper hooks on top of it. And so this is also going to be divided into a clean A and B section. We'll label those. The thing is, again, so intro, bass drop, break 1, hook drop 1, main break and build, hook drop 2. Everything's divided into clean A-B sections. Even the intro. So with the bass drop, we had the clean A-B. A was just the groove. B was the Vox rep LP up. Break 1 is a clean A-B. We have the break, we have the build. HD1 is a clean A-B. We've got that vocal phrase repeating, and then we also have the vocal call responding with some sound design elements. Main break and build is a clean A-B. A is down, okay, we settle in the strip, then we settle down into the basement, and then in the B section we start to build, we bring those drums back, and then we get those typical build elements, which is the rep, roll, rise, grow, and the pipo, and so down and then up, so we get that V shape, or the dip. And then now we're into HD2. HD2 is going to be, in this track, almost identical to HD1, so it's what I call a sandwich track, because you can imagine that these two guys are the buns, and this is the stuff in the middle. And so these are, you know, they're both buns, they're the same thing. And so this is ultimately going to be the same as HD1 with a couple changes. So one of the first ones is that we're going to get an entry here. So bum bada bum bum bum. Okay, we don't have an entry there. So again, tiny little changes here, but this is the most important moment of the track, so we want to give it that extra boost, and so an entry is going to help us do that. Okay, and okay, so that's really cool. So the entry is actually the same as that kind of bass sound, and so that makes things even easier, right? So you don't have to have another entry sound, just recycle one from later. Another thing is when you have this bass sound, it also comes in the bass drop. That foreshadows this sound later on. So when this comes in, it already sounds and feels familiar. And so that's really smart there, just efficient. And so let's, yeah, I was going to move this guy over here, but we don't need to because this quote-unquote entry is actually just part of the little bass melody here. But it's the exact same thing, okay? We have the vocal with the segments, and then those are corresponding with that ascending bass melody, and that and is also interacting with that kind of Jamaican perk thing. And so here we're getting that kind of jangly arp thing again. And now we are in the outro, okay? Now the outro, so let's just do this. This is going to be the Vox line. And this is going to be the Vox segs CR with ST hooks. Okay, sound design hooks. And the outro, of course, is going to also be divided into a clean AB. This is just going to be groove. This is going to be B equals beat. Okay, and then here we're just going to do, that's it, okay, groove beat. So that's it. Let's take the bass out there, because that's what happens. So here's the groove, here's the beat, no bass, there you go. And so that's all that happens there. And so this, again, is just a flawless example of the HD2 formula in action, okay? So going it over again, we have intro, bass drop, break 1, HD1, we have the main break and build, we have HD2, we have outro. That is the HD2 formula. So next, down a level from that, that's the higher level of it, right? The higher level is the formula itself. And then we have the individual sections. Everything's gonna be divided into an A-B section. So here we have A is gonna be the groove, and then B in the bass drop is going to be the Vox rep LP up, and this is a transition element, okay, transitioning us into the next. And then here with the main break, or I'm sorry, the B1, we have, this is going to be just chill, right? And this is going to be a build, so B equals build. Cool. And so everything's cleanly divided into ABs. The intro, bass drop, AB, break 1, AB, hook drop 1, AB, main break and build, AB, HD2, AB, outro, even AB, okay? Thinking about it that way, you can see it's kind of straightforward on how you might want to approach your own track, or how you could model this and use it as a reference, okay? You obviously don't have to copy what he's doing, but you can copy the higher level of what's going on. So here in the A section for the drop, if I was working on a track, the first thing I would do is focus on HD1, main break and build, and HD2. Makes it even easier that HD1 and HD2 are basically the same. And so all you really need to do is focus on this little cycle right here. Okay, maybe main break and build through HD2. Okay, so what do we have in the drops? We start out with a vocal for 16 bars, not just repeat. So if you find a vocal, that'll inform you what you could do. Go find a vocal that repeats. John he didn't make this up. He's not the only person in the world to find a vocal that repeats over the drop. There's hundreds of tracks that do that. And so go find a vocal that might repeat over, I think this phrase repeats every 4 bars. Okay, so find a vocal phrase that's cool, that repeats every 4 bars. There you go, you have your first 16 bars. And then the second 16 bars for the B section of the drop. Then find a cool little segment of that vocal that you can kind of chop up, and then start running through synth presets and writing little melodies that fill the gaps of the vocal. And that's going to get you really far in creating a 32 bar drop section for your track, which you can just have repeat with a little bit of elevations here in HD2 over HD1, like entries. Maybe he has another little ride on top. Maybe the punks here are a little bit more dramatic. Like, there's little elevations that you can do, but just bare bones, that's like the starting point, is just get that vocal that you can repeat for 16 bars, get those segments of the vocal that you can kind of chop up over the next, over the B section, and get those sound design elements to kind of fill the gap there. And then with the main break and build, Okay, so you have the strip section that drops into the basement of the track, and then you have a build section. And so it has, the build section has the classic 5 elements, the rep, roll, rise, grow, and pipo. And so just absolutely flawless execution of this. I mean, it's shot straight to number 1, and that's no surprise to me. Number 1, obviously John has a huge name, so anytime he releases his track, especially on even something like Defected, is probably going to go up there. But I could see why I think this track's going to have a lot of staying power, because the structure is phenomenal. The hooks are clearly presented. They're big. They're focused. The development of the track is flawless. That HT2 formula is compelling. It tells a very clean story that the listener can follow and enjoy, right? Nothing about this track is confusing. And yeah, so I hope you found that this hook and lift map useful. Of course, you can download this for yourself. I hope you got a lot out of it. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.